If you like this video and want to support the channel, consider subscribing to my Patreon. The link is down in the description. When Hollow Knight Silksong released in September of this year, many fans and critics were quick to compare the game to From Software's magnum opus, Elden Ring, and for good reason. Both were hotly anticipated games that suffered from delays, wild online speculation, and hype. Both were almost overnight successes, with Silksong selling over 5 million copies within its first week, and Elden Ring representing a mainstream breakout hit for a developer with a history of beloved but niche games. Both games are hard. Like, really, really hard. And hard in a way that resulted in almost identical uproar in the days following their release, with players taking sides in an online debate about how difficulty contributes to a game's atmosphere and storytelling, and whether or not the absence of difficulty modifiers is an accessibility blind spot for some developers. Both games have a parry. That's not what I want to talk about. Instead, I want to tell you a story. Two stories, actually. One from Elden Ring and one from Silksong, that represent a similarity between the two games. Not a similarity in gameplay or difficulty or mechanics, but a similarity in the aesthetic and philosophical foundations that these games are both built upon. Because the well that both of these games draw from is much, much deeper and more surprising than you might think. After all, both games are, at their hearts, about beauty. From the very beginning of the game, Elden Ring pulls the player north towards the city of Lindell. Through landmarks, exploration, challenges, and clever map design, there's an inevitable progression up through Limgrave, past Stormvale Castle, through the swamps of Liurnia and the Academy of Raya Lucaria, up and up until you reach the Altus Plateau. Even upon ascending to this cliff-top, eternally autumnal landscape, the city is little more than a mirage on the horizon, and getting inside is no small feat. Guarded by a fearsome knight on horseback imbued with draconic power, and requiring the player to have acquired 2 great runes from the demigods of the lands between, access to the City of the Gods is a privilege given only to those who prove themselves worthy. Outside the towering walls, noble pilgrims pound on immovable doors, begging to be let in. The surrounding lands are torn up, remnants of an ancient war littering the ground. Siege machines, broken spears, massive arrows launched from turrets on parapets high above, evidence of the calamity that caused the rulers of the city to seal it up like a tomb. No one gets in, no one gets out. But provided you are up to the challenge and manage by skill, luck, brute force, or a combination of all three to best the demigods and breach the walls of Lindell, you're greeted with an odd sight. The City of the Gods, the seat of power in the lands between, the crown jewel of the Golden Order and Marika's lineage, is silent. No common people walk the streets, no children can be heard, there is no life in this place. Only the shambling corpses of a once great empire. The only music comes from lone pipers, little more than scavengers in the wreckage. Wild dogs roam through the empty streets, picking at the bodies of the slain. The only thing resembling religious devotion comes in the form of strange, alien heralds who seem less concerned with restoring the old order than bending in worship to the Erd Tree and whatever is coming in the wake of Marika's reign. Despite all of this, Lindell is beautiful. Ask anyone who has played Elden Ring to list some of their favorite moments, and this will typically be a common pick. The player's first view of the city is breathtaking. It is unlike anything else seen in the game so far. The architecture is imperial and ornate, a combination of Roman and Byzantine visual cues signifying political and military might. This is the kind of city that only vast, unimaginable wealth and power could build. But crucially, we don't see Lindell at the apex of its power, but at its nadir, its lowest point. This is an empire, an entire civilization, brought to its knees by civil, religious, and political conflict. And perhaps it's this combination of factors, strength, beauty, and majesty, coupled with decay, sorrow, and tragedy, that makes this site so powerfully resonant. The world of Silksong, a land going by the name of Farum, is a cruel place. The beginning stages of the game are wild, natural spaces following the logic of the animal kingdom. Kill or be killed, eat or be eaten. The protagonist, Hornet, escapes from captivity at the beginning of the game, stolen from her home by religious zealots, hoping to bring her to a place she learns is called the Citadel. What this place is, and why they sought to kidnap her there, is unknown. But as she travels up through Farum, she learns from rare friendly pilgrims about the kind of life the denizens of this kingdom lead. Farum is a theocracy, a society ruled by a religious elite who extract labor, wealth, and worship from those they deem their social and spiritual lessers. Reaching the Citadel and completing a pilgrimage is a task laid on the backs of seemingly all the citizens of Farum, and it is a task at which almost none of them succeed. Even for someone as skilled and practiced as Hornet, it is a Herculean task to reach the gates of the Citadel, and even then, one of the most challenging bosses in the game guards the way forward. But with the last judge defeated and the bells rung, the gate swings open, and you discover that the Citadel, like Lindell, is silent. Golden and beautiful, ornate, massive, and complex, like nothing else you have seen in the land of Farum since your unfortunate arrival, but silent and empty. That is until you meet a familiar face. Lace, a skilled fencer you fought in Deep Docks, greets you at the entrance to the Citadel and taunts you, mocking you for how hard your progress has been. She hints at a deeper knowledge of Farum and its secrets, and this is where, finally, the Citadel breaks its silence. Music swells, threads invade and animate the corpses of long-dead pilgrims around you, forcing you into battle. The place comes alive with the sounds of clashing needles and an unseen chorus singing from somewhere deep inside this fortress. The Citadel is many things. It is imposing and grand. It is majestic. It makes you feel small. It is also a place of unfathomable cruelty, of horrifying reanimation, strange and mysterious religious rituals. Despite these things, though, or maybe because of them, it is beautiful. The horror, the decay, the tragedy, and the beauty are wound together. You cannot have one without the other. In the original Design Works book for Dark Souls 1, there's an interview between game director and studio head Hidetaka Miyazaki and one of the game's artists, a man named Waragai. Miyazaki talks here about his philosophy when it comes to designing places and characters. He says he always strives for a sort of dignity, even in the midst of gruesome or horrifying circumstances, and that designs which rely on gore or shock value alone will not get his approval. Waragai then recalls a conversation between himself and Miyazaki regarding a design for an undead dragon. Miyazaki rejected his design and gave him this direction. Quote, "This isn't dignified. Don't rely on the gross factor to portray an undead dragon. Can't you instead try and convey the deep sorrow of a magnificent beast doomed to a slow and possibly endless descent into ruin?" Years later, a writer at IGN caught up with Miyazaki to ask him about this quote, which had attained a sort of cult status among fans of the Souls series, and if his view on design and dignity had changed over the years. Miyazaki had this to say, quote, "I think what I'm trying to do is depict something beautiful at the end of the day. How you interpret beautiful is obviously in the eye of the beholder. It doesn't necessarily have to be something physically charming or outwardly beautiful. It can be something inside that lets you empathize with them on a deeper level. To be realistic, I feel something beautiful needs something ugly, something that's depraved or tragic to heighten and embolden that beauty. I think that's a much more realistic depiction of beauty, to have something small and beautiful inside of something tragic and decaying. Something that's just plainly, outwardly always beautiful doesn't have a sense of reality to me. I like to try to create something beautiful within that tragedy. This is the common ground between Silksong and Elden Ring. Both are games about beauty and dignity, but a very particular kind of beauty. Beauty that is surrounded by and suffused with sorrow, decay, and tragedy, but in such a way that it heightens the effect of what the player sees, hears, and experiences. Without a dose of depravity or tragedy, the depiction of beauty runs the risk of being tame and lifeless. It calls to mind the paintings of Thomas Kinkade, the so-called painter of light. His works, while technically proficient and popular enough to make him one of the best-selling artists of all time, are empty. There is nothing resonant in them, nothing that touches on the innate horror, sorrow, or struggle of the human experience. No Kinkade painting has ever moved me deeply or ignited any sort of powerful emotional reaction in me, but both of these games have. There is something profoundly humanistic about Silksong and Elden Ring. Even though on the surface they both deal with supernatural forces and take place in far-flung fantasy worlds, a closer look reveals them to be games that are fundamentally preoccupied with how it feels to be human. Everywhere you look, you see examples of this Miyazaki quote, of something small and beautiful inside of something tragic and decaying. The childlike faith and generosity of the pilgrims, the bravery and companionship of those you can summon into battle with you, the grandeur of the natural world growing over the remains of a cruel and unjust order, reclaiming power from those unfit to wield it. These are beautiful, human experiences, ones which we would never get to have in a quote-unquote perfect world with no tragedy and no sorrow. Thank you for watching.